Wow!
After so many years, and so many adventures, why was it not until Tears of the Kingdom that we see the Master Sword shatter into pieces? Link has faced evil before, and each time he's prevailed with the help of the sword. So why is Tears any different? Well, I have a theory. Demise broke the Master Sword. Breath of the Wild is the first time in the series we see the Master Sword actually get damaged. Not broken, but we can see the wear and tear of battle on it. Tears of the Kingdom is the first game where the Master Sword straight up breaks into pieces. Ganondorf somehow manages this feat when he attacks with his GLOOM during the intro. But how is this possible? How can the legendary blade that seals the darkness, first created as the Goddess Sword by the goddess Hylia and forged into the Master Sword by Link in Skyward Sword, be capable of breaking in the first place? The answer to this can be found at the beginning of the timeline. At the end of Skyward Sword, Demise is not destroyed completely. After Link defeats Demise in single combat, Demise disintegrates into a cloud of darkness, and Link, raising the Master Sword, absorbs what's left of him. Fi tells Link that his residual consciousness has been absorbed into the Master Sword and is now sealed away. What does that mean exactly? Translation: part of Demise is in the Master Sword. This is also the reason why Impa decides to stay in the past instead of returning to the present with Link, Zelda, and Groose. She tells the group that she must stay behind to protect the sword, while Demise's remains decay within. Upon returning to the present, the three are reunited with an elderly Impa, and feeling as her duty has been completed, Impa fades away. An interesting point though is that when young Impa is explaining why she must protect the sword, she says Demise's spirit must never reawaken, and he must never be allowed to threaten the world again. From this dialogue, this residual consciousness that Fi mentions must be Demise's spirit, or at least enough of his remaining spirit that if he ever was released from the sword, he could return. Another point is that even though Impa completes her task of protecting the sword, it's never actually confirmed if Demise's spirit has faded away in all that time. We know the Master Sword is a vessel of sacred energy, which would presumably be what causes Demise's spirit to decay inside the sword. But you also have to remember the only way to kill the imprisoned, which was a form of Demise, was with the Triforce. The whole point of Hylia becoming immortal was because gods cannot use it, and she knew even though Link was the one to ultimately use the Triforce, it would be the only way to kill Demise. We also know that the Master Sword is not as powerful as the Triforce, so by this logic, Demise's spirit could have survived past the events of Skyward Sword, and because the only way to kill Demise is with the Triforce, his spirit could have been alive in the Master Sword the entire Zelda franchise, up to the events of Tears of the Kingdom. Maybe we've misinterpreted the sword that seals the darkness. Maybe the darkness it's referring to isn't actually Ganondorf. Maybe it's Demise's spirit, sealed in the Master Sword since the events of Skyward Sword. And that's where my theory kicks in. If Demise's spirit has been in the sword this entire time, then maybe it was the reason why the sword breaks in Tears of the Kingdom. To explain how, we need to look at Malice and GLOOM. Breath of the Wild features Malice, which is the physical form of Calamity Ganon's hatred. If Link interacts with it, it will just damage him. Tears of the Kingdom gives us GLOOM, which is the physical form of Ganondorf's hatred, and is more dangerous than the malice of Calamity Ganon, since Ganondorf's powers are enhanced by his secret stone, and because Calamity Ganon is a weaker being, originating from Ganondorf. If Link touches GLOOM, his maximum heart count will decrease and become unusable until it gets restored by standing underneath a light root or eating food with the sunny effect. Both Malice and GLOOM are manifestations of hatred, and hatred is how we connect to Demise. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are not the first time we see hatred in physical form, as pointed out in this video by Wiz Catches Lightning, and this one by Nintendo Black Crisis. In Skyward Sword, hatred is manifested in plain sight. In the ancient cistern, deep underground, we have these pools of purple-colored water. If Link touches it, he becomes cursed, unable to use weapons or items temporarily, similar to what happens when Link comes into contact with Gloom in Tears of the Kingdom. Debuffs caused by hatred. Malice, Gloom, and this purple water also share a similar color. Both Wiz and NBC suggest this water is tainted by malice. Breath of the Wild also features cursed enemies, who are described as being reanimated by malice. Skyward Sword also features cursed bokoblins, and if we look at their character description, it gives us a similar story. There's also cursed spumes, Dark Lizalfos, and Dark Keys, all of which can curse Link, just like the tainted water below the ancient cistern. Cursed bokoblins, Dark Lizalfos, and Dark Keys can also drop evil crystals, said to be pure, crystallized monster malice. Even Koloktos, the boss of the ancient cistern, is said to be animated with dark energy, which we see happen when Link confronts Girahim in the boss chamber. The color and animation of this dark energy would imply that it too is malice. So what is the source of this malice and hatred? How about the guy who uses his hatred to place an eternal curse on Hyrule, the cycle that we see numerous times throughout the series? We know that the malice of Breath of the Wild comes from Calamity Ganon, who comes from Ganondorf, and the gloom in Tears of the Kingdom also comes from Ganondorf. Because Ganondorf is an incarnation of Demise's hatred, you could logically say that Demise is the source of all malice and dark energy in Skyward Sword. The point I'm trying to make is that malice, gloom, these manifestations of hatred could wake up or reinvigorate the spirit of Demise, or whatever is left of him within the Master Sword, if the source of this hatred was powerful enough. Calamity Ganon's malice was only strong enough to damage the Master Sword, and we do see that the sword does get stronger in the presence of his malice. But Ganondorf's gloom, the hatred from the man himself, amplified by his secret stone, could be strong enough to energize whatever leftover essence of Demise is still trapped, allowing it to weaken the Master Sword from within, like a Trojan horse. And the weakened part of the blade that we see during the intro, the part that could have been weakened by Demise, is where the sword finally breaks. An observation that also reinforces this theory is how much Tears of the Kingdom is influenced by Skyward Sword. Tears has a lot of design and story elements that were first seen in that earlier game. This theory would go along with that, borrowing the idea of malice and hatred that we see and connecting to the event of Demise being sealed in the Master Sword. Even Demon King Ganondorf shares a lot of similarities with Demise's design. If this theory were true, it wouldn't be the only time in Tears that Demise is alluded to. One small problem with this theory I did realize is how could Ganondorf be a reincarnation of Demise if Demise wasn't actually dead? I do have two suggestions. The first is that maybe Demise did actually decay inside the Master Sword, but his hatred survived. So it's actually Demise's hatred that's still trapped in the sword that causes it to break. This would connect to all of the previous instances of hatred mentioned earlier. The second suggestion is something I said before, that Ganondorf is not actually a reincarnation of Demise. Ganondorf is the embodiment of Demise's hatred. At the end of Skyward Sword, Demise doesn't say he will return. He says his hatred will, as an incarnation. Incarnation is defined as a person who embodies in the flesh a deity, spirit, or abstract quality. And we see this with Ganondorf. He is not Demise born again. Demise's hatred incarnated as a mortal being. Ganondorf is a mortal with the spirit of hatred. Because the Ganondorfs in the series are not reincarnations of Demise himself, he could technically be alive, sealed within the Master Sword, while there are Ganondorfs terrorizing Hyrule. This theory does present an interesting question then. If the Master Sword broke and Demise's spirit was still sealed inside, does that mean Demise is now free? Will we see a comeback later in the series now that Ganondorf is dead? Or will we just see Tears Ganondorf revived? Or a different Ganondorf appear? Let me know your thoughts below. And if there's anything you agreed or disagreed with, or you just want to say hi, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching.